Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. Our mission at City Current is to power the good, and we do that through positive media, events, and philanthropy. This show features interviews with a mix of business and community leaders who discuss important efforts, trends, lessons learned, and ways to get involved so we can learn more about our community and work together to make a difference. Now, on to the show. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And that's why we're honored to have with us Mary-Linden Salter, Executive Director of Tennessee Association of Alcohol, Drug, and Other Addiction Services. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Let's start out. Give us a little bit of background for the organization.
Well, TAADAS was founded in 1976. We're coming up on our 50th anniversary. It is a nonprofit that started out as an association of addiction treatment providers, and it was about, coming together and trying to promote access to addiction treatment and advocacy for the field and for those seeking treatment. It evolved as early as the 1980s into a grant-funded organization that provided services as well. And some of those services are still in place. For example, we staff the Tennessee REDLINE. It's a 24/7 toll-free hotline for addiction treatment referrals, and frankly, any referral. We're staffed to be able to do that. We also, early on, were managing it's called the Tennessee Clearinghouse. So it's a statewide clearinghouse of free information. Any program, school, Kiwanis Club, individual in the state of Tennessee can go on our website, request information about all kinds of mental health and substance abuse topics, parenting, suicide prevention, etc., and we ship it to you for free. As many materials as you might need for your classroom, etc., or doctor's office, whatever. Early on, we also got a contract with the state to do training for prevention and clinical staff around the state. Those trainings are not quite free. We charge a little bit just to be able to do snacks and a few things, but they're very cost effective and they're available across the state, both in person and virtually now. And then as time went by, TAADAS grew and changed. We now represent, in some part, the recovery courts, prevention coalitions, peer support organizations, recovery housing, many of the aspects of addiction and recovery across the state. So where we started with maybe at most 20 members in 1976, we now have roughly 124. And it changes, every day, it seems like. So we have a broader coalition. We do a lot more advocacy, legislation-wise. We've been responsible for advocating for changes to the Good Samaritan law so that people at the scene of an overdose are not prosecuted when they call 911. And other additions to the service delivery system, like access to programs for mothers and children who can be treated together in both during their pregnancy and postpartum. So we do a lot of advocacy, and as a result, our programs have grown too. So we now fund things like the Tennessee Pathways Behavioral Health Scholarship for master's preparing clinicians. We are involved in other training initiatives. We do all the training for certified peer recovery specialists in the state. We provide access to an app for anyone who graduates from a Tennessee state-funded treatment program. They get free access to this app and many other services. So we're much broader and much more diverse.
Talk about some of the major hot topics. I mean, you've kind of touched on a couple. I know that gambling is something that you all focus on as well. And the proliferation of online gambling, I think, has really, opened up kind of Pandora's box on that side in terms of gambling addictions. Talk about gambling. Talk about some of the other things that are really hot topics right now in terms of being top of mind for the organization.
Well, yes, we are an association of addiction and for drug, alcohol, and other addiction disorders, which includes gambling addiction, process addictions like online gaming, and other kinds of disorders. So we have, since the lottery was initiated, we have been given funding to address gambling addiction through our hotline training, etc. And but with the legalization of online sports betting, that has just skyrocketed. And we would get maybe anywhere from 10 to 20 calls a month pre sports betting. We now get anywhere from 70 to 100. So we get a lot more calls, a lot more desperate calls. And the trend that we have found the most disturbing is the number of callers who are underage, who are in deep trouble with sports betting early in their lives. So we do have treatment providers who specialize in gambling addiction across the state that we can refer people to. A lot of that treatment is virtual as well, so people have access. And that is something that we've certainly seen exponentially grow. And we're working with the Sports Betting Authority and others at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse to try to address it.
Give me one or two others. I mean, fentanyl, like what are the other ones that are really like have kind of your eyes right now in terms of major hot topics?
Well, yes, with the opioid, I would call it first the opioid prescription crisis, because our state in 2012 was number 2 in the country for the number of opioid prescriptions per capita. If my memory is right, it was something like, I think it was 7 prescriptions per adult in the state. And that was a lot when you consider that most people don't take an opioid. But you know, that prescription epidemic resulted in an addiction epidemic, because you can take away the prescription, but people are still dependent on that substance. And so we have been dealing with that, and the overdose rate that has skyrocketed as a result. When opioids became harder and harder to access and to produce, things like fentanyl were introduced into our drug supply by players such as China and Mexico in an effort to, you know, keep people supplied with a drug of choice, many of whom did not realize that fentanyl was what they were taking instead of the counterfeit pill that they thought they were buying. And since then, drugs like xylazine, which is an animal tranquilizer, have been introduced into the drug supply with horrible effects. Fentanyl has become harder to come by because of drug interdictions at the border. And so xylazine is being substituted in these counterfeit pills and other kinds of means to access the drug. And it has, it's not to shock your audience, but it can result in open, sore, kind of flesh-eating wounds on people. It's very hard to treat, and when people overdose from it, there is no overdose remedy like there is for xylazine or for fentanyl and opioids. There is an overdose reversal agent that is often given at the scene, you know, for opioid overdoses that xylazine cannot be reversed. So that has increased our overdose death rate to a certain extent. But I'm happy to say that because of, I think, a lot of efforts to bring the overdose reversal agents to the street and we were active in advocating for things like xylazine test strips and fentanyl test strips to be added to overdose reversal kits so people could test their drugs, know what they were taking, know what, you know, hopefully choose not to take. And so the overdose death rate has come down because of those efforts, I think, as well as in ever increasing drug interdictions at the border. So we're happy to see those rates going down recently. But unfortunately, people are trading one addiction for another because, again, your dependence doesn't go away just because the supply does. So we're seeing our rates of alcoholism and stimulant use go up while our rate of opioid use and overdoses is going down.
tie that into then Clearinghouse, as you mentioned, sharing the resources, being proactive, just like you're talking about, and the advocacy. So carry that into then, just like you're talking about, the things that you're doing about it.
Well, a lot of what we do is education and training, and we certainly want people to understand the nature of addiction, the disease, if you will, of addiction. Like I said, just when you get drug dependent, that dependency doesn't go away just because the supply does. And I think there's a lot of belief out there that people can just stop, or that, going to treatment, should just magically work. And we try to help educate people that it's just like the disease of diabetes, for example. You might go on a diet once, you might have 7 different diets, you might relapse a whole bunch of times and even end up in the ER because you've not managed your diet well. The same things happen with addiction. It is a chronic relapsing disease, just like diabetes. And we need to have multiple attempts at treatment and different kinds of support for different types of addiction and different types of people. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. There isn't a magic cure. We have to treat it as a relapsing, recurring disease, and not blame and shame people for not being able to quit something that their body is dependent on. And insulin is a dependent drug, just like opioids can be.
The Tennessee REDLINE number, 1-800-889-9789. Once again, 800-889-9789. Touch on that again as that resource.
That is our statewide toll-free hotline for addiction treatment referrals. And we refer people to, everything from withdrawal management to rehab and residential treatment. If they need medical interventions, and some drugs do require medical intervention for people to come off, we try to refer them appropriately. We also refer people to AA and NA groups, recovery housing, and sometimes other ancillary services like women's shelters, food banks, transportation entities. We also link people to peer recovery specialists so that they can have somebody to call and to make sure that they understand how to navigate the system, who's in their community. So that's, we have a wide variety of resources, and we refer to all kinds of services beyond the scope of addiction treatment as well, just because we try to connect people to the right thing.
Touch on the success of the recent Hands Across the Bridge event.
Oh, our inaugural Hands Across the Bridge event was held this year. And to be honest, we have stolen shamelessly from other cities that have bridge events in the rivers in their city. But it was a remarkable way I have seen, for people to come together, hold hands, and have a visual show of strength and respect for those who are in recovery, who may not have survived an overdose. It shows, I think, the ability of people to recover when you see 500 people across the bridge joining hands who have been in that place and who have come through it. So it's just a way, I think, of celebrating, what we've accomplished, just celebrating, the people who've managed that recovery. And we hope to make it an annual event and to really make it something where we can have a bigger and better celebration next year.
How can the community get behind? How can the community support everything that you're doing?
Well, a lot of what we do is advocacy, and advocacy is certainly an unfunded mandate. We know that we need to get out there and to work with the legislature, work with Congress, work with state and city leaders on policy issues. Many times people just don't understand the effect of a particular regulation is going to have on the industry or on the people who are living in recovery. And once you get out there and educate and advocate for, changes to legislation that may be beneficial, it's something that benefits everybody in the community, not just those in recovery. Because a community that can recognize recovery, it thrives. And you have people who are in your community who are able to participate in their own education, their own, as part of the workforce, and can make their community a better place to live too. So we want it to be something where our advocacy, illustrates that, and at the same time helps to make sure that we don't stigmatize or overly burden, those in recovery from being able to accomplish the things that we know they can.
We're talking with Mary-Linden Salter, Executive Director of Tennessee Association of Alcohol, Drug, and Other Addiction Services. Wrap up with website, social media. Where do we go to access the information, the resources? Once again, the Tennessee REDLINE number, 800-889-9789. But where else do we go to plug in and find all the information?
Well, we definitely have a TAADAS.org website that has the 800 number for the Tennessee REDLINE listed. People need resources. There are certainly some listed there. All of the Clearinghouse information can be ordered online, so you can search by topic on just about anything. And like I said, we'll mail it to you for free. Our training calendar is also on the website. So if you're a clinician or somebody who works in prevention or just a community member who wants to know more, all of those trainings are available to you. And we certainly have scholarships for those who need them as well. We have access to peer recovery specialist training information. One of the programs that TAADAS houses that I actually didn't mention is the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. So we have people embedded across the state who can do suicide prevention, education, and referrals. We find that suicide prevention and overdose prevention kind of go hand in hand. So we work together on many of those initiatives. But really, and especially if there's an advocacy issue out there, we try to publicize it. We publicize white papers and other policy papers to help people understand the impact of certain issues or pieces of legislation and gather, I think, partners in those efforts. So if you have any interest in those issues, I would just encourage you to stay connected and look at what we're up to, and please join us.
Mary, thank you for all you and your amazing team do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the cityCURRENT show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
And when you talk about being the change you want to see in the world, we're super excited and we're honored to have with us Pastor Frank Stevenson. He's the senior pastor with Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, a City of Grace. How are you doing?
I am wonderful and excited to be with you today. And I want to start off by saying thank you for all of the work that you do and continue to do to showcase some very important things happening across the cities and the country. And thank you for just making sure that these stories are told.
Absolutely. Well, when you talk about creating good news, powering the good, and sharing the good news, obviously that's a huge part of this storyline. And so let's start with a little bit of context. Give us some background on Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, a City of Grace.
Absolutely. Friendship Missionary Baptist Church is located in Nashville, Tennessee, with over 85 years of history. And I'll tell you, we are excited to be a church that's very intentional about making community impact. And so most of the people who are associated with this church understand our mission, which is part of just being servant leaders and making sure we are intentional on how we serve our community. I'm excited to serve as the senior pastor, but the real work is all of the folk who just love our fellow neighbors.
When you talk about the church, obviously you have the power of transformation, of forgiveness, of Christ in the church. But when you talk about being a church body outside of those four walls and giving back and making a difference in so many ways, talk about why that's so important to you personally and for your congregation.
Absolutely. Personally, I am a benefactor of those who were able to help a single mom. My mom was a single mom raising us in the housing projects, and I saw the good work of good people that really was a benefit to our community. And I wanted to make sure we adopted that. In a more theological fashion, I think the example that Christ gave where he washed his disciples' feet is the model that we, obviously try to emulate, where we're willing to be the one that wants to make someone's journey better. Obviously, in this day and time, we all wear shoes and our feet don't get as dusty from the journey. But in terms of life getting us dusty and being able to kind of wash each other's feet in terms of just making your trip better if we encounter each other, a humbling way. You can't wash feet standing up. So it just means that you're humble and you care about the well-being of others and just being good neighbors. And so that's kind of what motivates us in that sense, in terms of just being good neighbors, looking out for other people. We don't complain. There was a man who was complaining about not having shoes, walked down the street and met a man with no feet. Someone is always a little worse off than you. And so what you do is take your platform to lift someone else up. There's a thirst of the soul that can only be quenched except through the sincere generosity of helping someone else with no repayment expected in return. And that's kind of our motto.
You all do so much. So when you talk about kind of sharing the story of the different programs and it's working with youth and seniors and food. So how do you like to share the story of the different programs and all that you do?
Yeah, it's really important that we are concerned about the least, the lost, the left out, especially in a country as rich as ours. And so most of the services and programs we do is what I call bootstrap initiatives, literally giving people the bootstraps to pick themselves up. It's hard to pick yourself up by bootstraps if you don't have bootstraps. So basic needs and just helping people have the tools to be better is kind of a part of our mission. Certainly as it relates to food insecurities, we're going to be right there. We did a program a few years ago where we went to the housing projects that still didn't have central heat and air. And, July was just horrific. And we gave out free air conditions to all of those residents who needed one. And we installed them, window units, but it was necessary. So those are the kind of things that where the rubber meets the road in terms of meeting needs and helping people. That's where we kind of lean in. As it relates to youth, we understand that making impact on the lives of youth is so important. So the programs that we have designed around wraparound services for youth is important and growing as we're getting ready to launch our after school program. Seniors are typically sometimes a forgotten group, particularly those who are on fixed incomes, who are making decisions between medicine and a good meal. But we try to make that a little easier. We feed them, we give them opportunities to practice cognitive skills so that they can stay active. Those are things that are really important to us. And simple check-in, how are you doing today? We've adopted a couple of senior towers that are based on income. So we know these people don't have a lot of money. And we fix them a meal every month, but we also go on Thanksgiving Day, on Christmas Day, and we provide a full meal. We become their family for a lot of these individuals, and we provide gifts and those type of things. We help single moms. Again, that's probably a greater passion for me. I saw my mom struggling to make Christmas special for us. And, she would start in July saving, and there was a thing called layaway. And she'd go put gifts and things on layaway, And so we just want to wrap our arms around a lot of single moms who are struggling in this season, and so that they don't have the heaviness of trying to figure that out.
Talk about how that ties into fighting isolation, like with the seniors, and tying into mental health and healing. So touch on kind of that aspect of the active service, but how that ties into the mental and spiritual side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We really believe that we're made to be connected. I mean, and again, from a biblical perspective, God said it's not good for man to be alone. So we're designed to be in communion with each other. And when we get into isolation, that is indeed really effective on our mental and mental health, and being well is so important. And so we are intentional about, first of all, sharing the message that it's okay not to be okay. And we may all have some of those days and some of those spaces. Secondly, that we want to make sure that we are reaching out so people don't feel lonely or don't feel left out or don't feel a space of hopelessness, which is obviously one of the greatest contributors to suicide, that feeling of hopelessness. And so we've been knocking on the door of making sure we're checking on our seniors and checking on people who we haven't seen, and just being a community advocate for inclusion.
How have these programs and this work transformed your view, your congregation's view of how you can be literally the physical hands of Christ and be a catalyst for transformation in the community. So how has this work really transformed your view and your congregation's view?
Yeah, I mean, that was a parable. That was a story that Jesus gave in the Bible. And he said, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was in prison, you wouldn't visit me. When I was in the hospital, you would come and see me. And the folk he was talking to said, we never saw you. Certainly, if we had seen you, Jesus, we would have certainly came and visited you. We would gave you some food and clothing and all of those things. And Jesus said, as you've done to the least of these, you've done also to me. In other words, that you had a responsibility. You are your brother's keeper. And so that message of responsibility to community and neighborhood, we cannot be well and ignore people who are not. It is not the Christ-like behavior or attitude that anyone should have. And because we're okay, and because the Lord has blessed us with jobs and homes and financial resources, it's to me it's distasteful to ignore the needs of the community.
Where do we go to carry this conversation forward?
Absolutely. So we have several opportunities for you, so you can reach us. We're on Facebook. You can just put Friendship Nashville, Instagram as well. Go to our website, Friendship Church. And I want you all to know that if you, in just I think I can say it now, we also now have an app. So you can go to the App Store in Google and Apple and download our app, and then you'll have access to everything. So it's the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church in Nashville app. If you Google that in the App Store, you'll have all of our information.
Awesome. Well, Pastor Frank Stevenson, thank you for all you and your amazing team and congregation do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. And thank you, Jeremy, for continuing to spread this good news and good work.
Thank you for watching the City Current Show. To learn more about each of the guests, to share your stories of others, leading by example, or to watch past episodes and more media focused on good news, visit our website at citycurrent.com or follow along on social media using the handle or hashtag citycurrent. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and thank you for all you do to power the good.